Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nate's Big Five. Although I must admit that we have now racked up more than 5 episodes, so we may need to rethink the name. But effectively, this is a travel destination type event where we talk about some of my favourite destinations in Africa, how you get there, what to do when you're there, everything you need to know to explore these amazing destinations. If you don't know who I am, my name is Nate Taiaroa, and I've been living, traveling, guiding, volunteering in Africa for more than 10 years. I'm really passionate about finding ways and innovative ways to make the world a better place. And that's part of the reason why I started Adventure Out Loud, which is an African travel specialist specializing in off the beaten track type experiences. So tonight we're going to be talking about Kilimanjaro, which is one of the most visited tourist attractions or tourist destinations in Africa. And we definitely do a lot of Kilimanjaro treks. One of the things we love doing is pairing Kilimanjaro or safari with an off the beaten track type experience that you've never heard of, and taking you to a place that can really make your friends jealous, that they've never heard of, and that doesn't have a million Instagram tags. That's the type of stuff that we love doing. The other thing that makes us really unique is we donate 50% of our profits to keep disadvantaged children in school. And as I said before, that's a way for us to make a difference in the world, because we believe education is one of the best ways to fight poverty. And one of the great things about when you travel with us is we'll take you to meet some of the charities that we support. We'll take you to meet some of the students that we sponsor through school, and you'll actually get this really amazing immersive experience where you can see firsthand the impact that we're making. We'll also make it possible for you to personally sponsor a student through school, and that's super simple. You can pay weekly, monthly, and in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing a lot of information about some students in Ethiopia and Kenya that we're trying to get sponsored. We've got 22 students actually all up that we need to get sponsored. So keep posted for that. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that we've got quite a lot to get through tonight. And tonight, as I said, we're talking about the highest freestanding mountain in the world, Mount Kilimanjaro. And so conscious of time, I'm going to jump straight in. Now, a couple of fun facts on Kilimanjaro. Sorry, I'm just clicked the wrong thing here. There we go. Couple of fun facts on Kilimanjaro. It is 5,895 meters high. That makes it the highest freestanding mountain in the world. The fastest ascent of Kilimanjaro is 4 hours and 56 minutes. Incredible feat, given that most people will take 7 or 8 days, and we'll talk more about that soon. The oldest trekker, almost 87 years old. Super impressive. It hurts me at 30, so I can't imagine what it must feel like when you're that age to push to the limit like you have to on Kilimanjaro. It's also the highest place where a rugby, cricket and football match has been held, and it also has the record for the highest pizza delivery in the world. And about 50 to 70,000 trekkers trek Kilimanjaro every year, although right now during COVID, that number is significantly less. Now, Kilimanjaro is actually one of the 7 summits. And here's a great graph around where it sits. So it sits at number 4. And I suppose one of the great things about Kilimanjaro is it's seen to be the highest peak out of the 7 summits that nearly everyone can summit. So the great thing with Kili is you don't need technical experience. It is just a trek. There are times when you may need to put crampons on. However, that's super rare, and normally it's just a trek. That doesn't mean it's super easy, so don't take that for granted. It just means that if you train, you give yourself enough time to acclimatize, you should have a pretty good chance of making the summit of Kilimanjaro. Now, there's a couple of things out of this whole session that really need to stick with you. If you take nothing else, here's the 3 most important things. Number one is do not trek Kilimanjaro in under 7 days. It is incredibly important for you to make sure you give your body time to acclimatize so that you can safely reach the summit of Kilimanjaro. Number two is don't pay under US $2,000 per person. The reason for that is that there's about 140 US dollars a day for your permits and trekking fees. So if you pay under $2,000, it means that they're either not paying their staff properly or they're skimping on your safety. Neither are good things, and that's why we say minimum $2,000 is the cheapest you should go. Now, obviously, if you're paying $2,000, that's a budget, super budget trip. It's not going to include a number of the things that a lot of our trips would include, like a day either side of accommodation at a nice accommodation option. It might be, say, at a backpacker or something like that. It also may not include your airport transfers. Be careful, some trips don't even include your Kilimanjaro fees. So then you turn up at the gate and you've got a whole heap of fees to pay, which is an unkind surprise. All of our trips include everything. And that's why we say 2,000 is a minimum for any of your trips up Kilimanjaro. The other really important thing is don't trek without insurance. If you do get sick and you do need the helicopter evacuation, it is available, but it'll cost you a lot of money if you don't have insurance. So you do want to make sure you have that insurance before you go. Now, just on the altitude, which I think is the most important thing to take out of here. And I'll quickly give a shout out to Kim. Welcome, Kim. I've just muted you, but you're actually, looks like you're training for your Kilimanjaro trek, which will hopefully be early in 2022. So we'll unmute you after so you can ask any questions. If you're live on Facebook, feel free to comment any of your questions, or if you join the Zoom, the details are on Facebook. Feel free to join us live and ask any questions at the end of the show. Now, the number one most important thing out of this whole episode is altitude. Our bodies are incredibly good at adjusting when they need to, but you've got to give them time to do that. And altitude is no different. So to put that into perspective, if you went from here, sea level in Australia, to the top of Kilimanjaro, in 10 minutes, you'd likely be unconscious. In 30 minutes, you'd likely be dead. That's how different it is up there with the altitude and the impact that has on your ability to breathe and get oxygen flowing through your body. Now, that isn't, I don't say that to scare you. I say that to help you realize how important it is to give your body time to acclimatize. This next slide is actually really important because this is the success rates of Kilimanjaro. So if you trekked Kili in 5 days, you've probably got about a 50% chance of reaching the summit safely. 6 days, 65%, 7 days, 75%, 8 days, 85%. These rates are getting better as companies learn how to manage altitude better and people take this more seriously. However, you can clearly see that there's a direct correlation with the amount of days you give yourself to acclimatize and the chance that you'll reach the summit. And now Adventure Out Loud over the last 6 years has actually, we have a 98% success rate. And there's a few reasons for that. One, we don't run tours under 7 days. If you want to do under 7 days, please look for another company. We do not think they're safe. And as such, we do not sell them. The other reason is that every day we take your oxygen reading, we do a safety check every day, we keep you going super slow. We have a policy of last person to camp is best place for making the summit, which is a great thing, right, Kim? And also, we don't let you go ahead of our guide. So some companies in the early days, the first couple of days of your trek, a lot of young men in particular will find these days quite simple and they'll run ahead. The risk with running ahead of everyone else is, yes, it's simple, but when altitude hits you, it'll hit you like a truck. And there's very little chance you're going to come back from that. So the trick with altitude sickness is going slow, giving your body time to acclimatize, keeping your heart rate low so that your oxygen requirement is also low. They're the keys to making sure that you get to the summit of Kilimanjaro. And that doesn't matter who you are, how fit you are, altitude does not discriminate. If you go too quickly, it will hit you and you will not summit Kilimanjaro. So talking about the number of days, there's a couple of key things to know about the different routes on Kilimanjaro. The red highlighter route, Marengo, is actually the first ever route up Kilimanjaro. And a lot of that's often the route people take if they want to do a quick trek. We don't sell Marengo. We don't think it's a good trek for acclimatization, and we also don't sell 4, 5, 6 day treks. I just had that highlighted to illustrate. The best two routes, I believe, are Machame, which I'm now moving my cursor around. That can be done in 6 or 7 days. Highly recommend the 7-day trek. Lemosho, that can be done to 6 to 8 days. Highly recommend doing in 8 days. Shira, again, around the 8-day mark. And there's one that goes around the back that isn't on this diagram, which is the Northern Circuit. That one is a 9 to 10 day, and also recommend that as a great route. Now, the two I highly recommend are Machame and 7 days. And if you want to see the day by days here on the left, so feel free to pause it and have a look at that. And Lemosho. Lemosho is the pick, and the reason is that it has some better acclimatization, has fewer trekkers, and there are some better opportunities to spot wildlife. So this is the trek that we do most for our small group treks. Machame tends to be the one that most people want to do if they're just doing a private trek by themselves. So again, pause, have a look at these day-by-day breakdowns if you want to know a little bit more. In the interest of time, though, I'm going to keep talking through. One of the things I love about Kilimanjaro are the different climate zones. And you can see here, there are actually 5 different climate zones. So on day 1, when you're driving up to the entry gate, you'll actually pass a lot of farms. And the lower climate zone on Kilimanjaro is a cultivation zone where they grow a lot of coffee, a lot of bananas. We'll actually have a chance after the trek to stop and try banana beer if you've never tried it. They also grow a lot of the things we will be able to grow in Australia. It's a really fertile area. The second section, which is where you start trekking on day 1 and also on your last day, is the rainforest area. And this is a really beautiful part of the trek. It's super old rainforest, lots of mosses. It's the highest chance of getting rainfall during your trek. So you do want to make sure you have good wet weather gear during these couple of days. And then once you leave the rainforest, you actually come into this hither moorland region for a couple of days. And this is much more like a shrubby region, like you can see there in the photo. And the great thing about this area is you get great views of Kilimanjaro and the summit, which is really spectacular to see where you're going. It's kind of funny that on day 2 or day 3, you might see the summit, but it actually takes you so many more days to walk around and then make an attempt on the summit, which is a good thing because as I said before, it gives you more time to acclimatize. After you leave the Heather Moorland region, you come into what I like to imagine Mars looks like, and it's an alpine desert region. And this is very dry, nothing survives up here. The only animals you'll find in this kind of area are mice because they live off the crumbs that we drop, and a couple of big birds, again, living off the crumbs that we drop. And then after that, you get to probably the most exciting zone, which is the Arctic zone. Kilimanjaro does still have some glaciers. They are melting very quickly, but if you climb in the next 5 to 10 years, you should be able to see glaciers. And that's really exciting to be able to walk pretty close to some of these really huge glaciers. Best time to trek is actually January, February, and July, August, September, they're the best times. December is also pretty good. And then March, April, October, November, you can expect a bit more rain. And May and June is your highest chance of rain. So I wouldn't recommend, particularly through that kind of mid-April to mid-June period. Obviously, bear in mind that the best periods to trek for weather also are the highest frequented times. So if you want to avoid the crowds, you probably want to look more in that March, April, or that October, November period. Given it goes all the way up to an Arctic zone on Kilimanjaro, we have a very variant temperature. So during the day, you can expect that the temperature might be 10 to 20 degrees Celsius. However, at night, most of the time it would drop to 0, even from night 1. And often it would go below that. And then on summit night, because you're actually trekking from midnight until sunrise, you can expect the temperature to get anywhere down to about -20 Celsius. So super cold. So the other great tip is do not underestimate how cold it will get on Kilimanjaro when you're trekking for 7 or 8 hours. And you might think, oh, I've been in that kind of cold when I'm skiing. However, it's different because when you're skiing, you're moving quickly and you're getting a lot of body warmth. Whereas on Kilimanjaro, you're moving so slowly, you did get some body warmth. But as soon as you stop to rest, it gets really cold really quickly, particularly if it's a windy night. So don't underestimate how cold it is. One of the great things about trekking with Adventure Out Loud is we individually check all of your gear. You'll have a professional guide check all of your gear before you go on Kilimanjaro. And if we don't think your gear is good enough to deal with the rain or with this kind of cold, we'll take you to a hire shop where you can hire something that's better. Because the last thing you want is to be trekking in the dark for 7 hours with boots, for example, that are frozen and wet. That's horrible. You have a very slim chance of making the summit and gritting it out in those types of circumstances. So you do want the right gear. And speaking of gear, most of the gear can be hired quite cheaply in Tanzania. And most of the quality is pretty reasonable nowadays. On the screen here, there's a couple of really important things that I think you should probably bring from home, particularly boots. You need waterproof boots that are going to be warm, and you need to make sure they're well worn in. Do not bring boots that aren't waterproof. If it rains on day 1, nothing dries on Kilimanjaro. So then you'll be in wet boots for the whole trek, which particularly when it gets cold means your boots are going to freeze, your feet are going to freeze, and it's going to be really unbearable. Highly recommend against that. So a good pair of boots that are waterproof, that you spend the time to wear in before you trek, are super, super important. The other really important thing is a good thermal layer. And I do recommend buying a pair of thermals, top and bottom, also something for your head and for your hands. I think it's really important to spend the money to bring a good pair of those over. If you want a second pair, you could hire the second pair in Tanzania. Same with gloves. I've had a lot of people hire gloves. The gloves are nice and warm, but they're just not, they don't waterproof it regularly enough. The hire shop, that is, don't waterproof it regularly enough. And as such, you get rain on day 3 or 4 or something, your gloves get wet, you've got frozen gloves on summit night. I know they're a couple of $100 for gloves or mittens, but please go and buy them. They are well worth it. You can always sell them again afterwards, and I think you'd make your money back. Same with dry gear. Ironically, the best dry gear is actually an umbrella, and you can walk with an umbrella if you want. However, the umbrella won't stop rain coming in sideways. So we do recommend dry gear, and that could be something as simple or cheap as a good thick poncho that also covers your bag. The great thing about dry gear is you'll probably reuse it if you're a trekker. So a good Gore-Tex jacket, pants, and a rain cover for your bag are really important, and I would recommend them. The other thing I'd highly recommend is a thermal liner. The reason for that is it adds it says up to 15 degrees. I think it's more like 7 or 8 degrees inside your sleeping bag. And that's really important on a cold night when you're laying in your tent. So I highly recommend them. They're about 80 Australian dollars. Really great investment. And the other great thing is they keep your sleeping bag from getting damaged, because any dirt that you have on you, because you're obviously not showering every day, is caught in the sleeping bag liner rather than in your sleeping bag. Sleeping bags, you can hire pretty good sleeping bags in Tanzania now. Obviously, you take the risk of, if it's a busy day when you go to the hire shop, maybe there won't be some available. So that's why I still recommend bringing one if you can afford to. If you don't have the money to buy a sleeping bag, then definitely we can hire one over there. But they're kind of the essential things that I highly recommend bringing from home. Boots being absolute number one. You have to bring your own boots from home. Highly recommend you don't hire them. And the main reason is most people who have hired boots before, if it rains, they find out the boots are not waterproof, or they develop blisters. Either way, it's an uncomfortable experience. Now, a couple of reasons why you might like to trek with Adventure Out Loud. As I said before, we've got a 98% summit success rate. That's since 2015. And the reason for that predominantly is we give you time to acclimatise. Most of our treks, particularly our small group treks, I'm with you, and every morning and evening I'll take your oxygen levels, I'll run through altitude symptoms with you, and we really just have this open dialogue with you where we encourage you to share how you're feeling so that we can properly manage that to give you the best chance of success. Just because you're feeling a little bit sick doesn't mean we'll send you down. It means we need to know so we can manage that risk. We'll obviously do everything we possibly can to get you to the summit, with the exception of obviously putting you or the rest of the team in danger. We will not let you keep going if we think it's dangerous for you to keep going. And the reason for that is mild altitude sickness can turn into fluid in your lungs or in your head, and both of those things can kill you very, very quickly. And that's why we take altitude very, very seriously. But as you can see, we still do a great job of getting everyone to the summit. Hey, Matt's just joined us. Matt, planning to come over and do Kilimanjaro. He'll come over during COVID, actually, but COVID's put a little halt to that. So hope you're soon, Matt. I'm just going to mute you for a moment and we'll take some questions afterwards, mate. The other reason is that we operate on 100% safety. So we carry an oxygen tank, but that oxygen is only for emergencies. It is not to help you summit. And the reason is that if we use our oxygen supplies to help you summit and then someone gets into trouble, we no longer have oxygen to save their life. And it's much more important to give yourself time to acclimatise and do Kilimanjaro safely than rely on oxygen. So we have a 100% safety record. We will send you down if you're in trouble. We will not take risks. You can always come back and trek Kilimanjaro another time. We also have a 100% satisfaction rating. So everyone who's climbed with us has had an amazing time, and we guarantee that you will as well. So if you're looking to do Kilimanjaro, then definitely give us a call, send us an email, or check out our website for how you can do that. We love having a chat to everyone, and particularly at the moment, we've got plenty of spare time to have a chat and organise a really personalised trip to Africa for you. One of the things you might like to do after your Kilimanjaro trek is extend it with a little R&R or some extra type of adventure. Probably the highest on the list would be safari, and Tanzania, I think, is the best destination in Africa for safari. They have the Serengeti, the Ngorongoro Crater, a number of other parks you've probably never heard of, which are equally as good as the Serengeti, I believe. And so you can add a really great safari in Tanzania on the back of your Kilimanjaro trek, or even before. I often actually recommend allowing a couple of days before your Kilimanjaro trek, just in case you get off the plane and you're a little bit sick, or your bags don't arrive, so your gear's not there. I often recommend doing a safari before your Kilimanjaro trek. And a lot of our small group adventures often have the safari and then the charity piece and then Kilimanjaro towards the end, to give you time to acclimatise, because a lot of the time, even in, say, Kenya or other parts of Tanzania, you're already at about 1,800 metres above sea level, which isn't going to make a huge impact on your acclimatization, but every little bit helps. So that's one of the reasons we recommend that before. After Kilimanjaro, I highly recommend Zanzibar. If you want a little bit of time on a beach, Zanzibar is an amazing place to go, particularly if you're coming with your partner and you want a little romantic getaway. The other place I'd recommend, probably even over Zanzibar, is Mafia Island, and that's because it's a little bit more remote and a little less busy than Zanzibar. The other great thing about Mafia Island is you can go swimming with whale sharks there from between October to March every year. And there's a great informational session on Mafia Island on our YouTube that you can check out whenever you want. The other two highly sought after activities are gorillas and chimps. Now, if you want to do gorillas, the two best options are Rwanda or Uganda. Rwanda is the most expensive, so we often don't send people there. We think Uganda is just as good for half the price. So Uganda is a great place to go if you want to trek gorillas. The thing I'd probably recommend most after a Kilimanjaro trek is Jane Goodall's Chimp Research Centre. It's called Gombe National Park if you want to Google it. Again, we've got a great info session and a little video on our YouTube about Gombe. Just look up Nate's Big Five and it'll all be there. Gombe is where Jane Goodall first went to research chimpanzees in the 1960s, and it's located on the banks of the second largest freshwater lake in the world. The only way to get there is by boat, so super remote. Only about 2,000 people visit every year, and I guarantee it'll be one of the best things you ever do in your life. In the morning, you'll get a chance to trek with the chimpanzees, and this is to get within a few meters of an animal that shares 98% of our DNA. It's really special, particularly when you're the only people there, which is highly likely given how few people go to Gombe. It's also a great place to just relax in the afternoon by the lake, go snorkeling, take a couple of bottles of wine if you're there with your partner. And this is really beautiful, romantic bungalows right on the beach, right on the lake that you kind of wake up to. You can just relax on the lake beach there. Really amazing place. You'll have a personal chef out there. Not that expensive. So for a 5-day itinerary, you're looking at about 2,500 Australian dollars. So pretty reasonably priced for Africa, and highly recommend. It's also great because it gives you a little bit of trekking after Kilimanjaro. So you're not sitting down, so you're still moving your body so you don't get so sore, but it's not too intense. So you're not, you can handle it after trekking for 7 or 8 days. So there's some of the things I'd recommend. A lot of people want to also add in Victoria Falls. I don't recommend Victoria Falls, even though it is possible. And the primary reason is it's much harder to pair the flights for Victoria Falls, because then you've got to head down to you got to head down to South Africa, then back up to Vic Falls, then back to South Africa, possibly back to Nairobi before you come to Australia. So either it's going to increase the cost of your flights, or it's going to add a lot of extra flights, which isn't great for the amount of time and also not great for the environment. So there's some of the things I'd recommend if you're coming to do Kilimanjaro. And Matt, I know you're planning to come and do, actually your sister and the group are planning to come and do Mafia Island. And Kim, I think you're planning to do the chimpanzees. I'm just trying to figure out how to unmute you both. Sorry, I don't know what's happening here. My computer's having a fit. There you are, Matt. How are you, mate?
There, that works, I think. Yeah, I'll just have to check. Yeah, good. Sorry for the late check-in. I just only got to the hotel room in Childers. Yeah, I think Maria and that are still planning on doing that. I'll just have to check my time availability to whether I can tack that on at the end. But yeah.
Absolutely. If you've got the time, mate, I highly recommend, particularly after Killy, it'll be nice to have a couple of days on Mafia Island at the beach and, eating some fresh caught fish and swimming with the whale sharks. Nice way to unwind after a pretty hard trek.
Definitely.
Now, do either of you guys have any questions about Kilimanjaro that you'd like me to talk through?
For myself, it's probably, I guess, more the conditions, like weather conditions to expect at certain times of year, things like that, and preparation. It's probably the biggest things for myself.
Absolutely. So you're going to be trekking in a really great period, Matt. I know we don't know the exact dates yet because we need to wait for the borders to open, but I'm going to make sure it's in a good period for weather. So the highest chance of rain for you, and same for you, Kim, will be on day 1 or the last day, which will be day 8 for both of you. And that's when we're in that rainforest. So it's good to have some good wet weather gear. I think you've already got plenty, Matt, from our chat already, just because there's a pretty high chance of rain through that rainforest at any time of year. Sorry, what was the second part of your question, Matt?
Probably just preparation, as in physical preparation required for it, and I guess probably the gear that's we need to sort of bring ourselves what would be suited.
Yeah, awesome. So gear, what I'm going to do for gear is I'm going to do a separate session for gear because there's so much to run through. I think it's actually valuable for me to hold up a jacket, show you what it kind of is and what you might like to have. So we'll do a totally separate session on that for 20 to 30 minutes. For preparation, the best way to prepare for Kilimanjaro is to mimic what you're going to be doing, which is multi-day hiking. So particularly if you can get out and do some 2-day treks, 3-day treks, even more or longer day treks in Australia, that would be wonderful. And that's the best way to train. If you can't afford the time to get out and do multi-day treks, try and at least do some walking, whether it's an hour a day or 2 hours a day, where you put maybe 8 to 10 kilos in your bag and you walk. That's the best way to trek. If you're time poor and you can't afford to walk, because obviously that's a slower mode of transport, running or aerobic exercise is good. So is strengthening your core and your leg muscles. They're the muscles you're going to use a lot. So particularly stairs, walking up and down stairs is really valuable. Particularly the down. A lot of people train the up muscles, and those are the bigger muscles anyway. But coming down Kilimanjaro will help more than going up. So make sure you train those muscles coming down as well. The other thing I highly recommend during your training is yoga or stretching. It's really important to make sure your muscles are flexible and that you're not getting injured. So making sure you stretch and warm up properly and warm down properly are really important.
Yeah. Well, the wife's got a Pilates reformer and she's an instructor, so I might have to use that a bit more as well.
Absolutely, mate. And particularly Pilates is great for glute workouts. I've never had my glutes hurt as much as they do after a Pilates class. So glutes are really important for the stepping up, stepping down. So yeah, that would be wonderful. And what Kim's doing right now actually is really great. She's just walking on a walking machine. So if you can't get out at night, for example, a walking machine is a really great way to get some Ks under your belt.
I'm on the elliptical at the moment, cross-train.
Great work. Well, you're hitting half an hour at least, so keep going. Do either of you have any other questions?
I guess.
No, not till we get closer. I asked you today about the pants. Have I got you? Matt? Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha. Sorry, you had one, Matt?
Yeah, I was just going to see, I guess you've probably got your finger on your pulse a fair bit as to what's going on there on Kilimanjaro with the other groups and guides and all the rest of it. And I just, probably what they're doing there is it's still sort of pretty much completely shut down with regards to obviously international travels comes to a standstill with that, but just I guess curious to see how the people are going on the mountain itself, or the ones that usually support that kind of work.
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. Being in Australia and our borders basically been shut. I mean, they've just opened to New Zealand the last week or so. It's kind of ironic to think that other people could potentially be traveling and doing Kilimanjaro, but it is actually open and they are still getting tourist travel there. So I was speaking to a lady the other day from Dubai who went there and she trekked in a group of 18. So there's still groups going up Kilimanjaro.
Right.
There aren't many though. And so a lot of the guys over there that rely on Kilimanjaro to survive, they are definitely struggling. We've done a little bit to help some of our crew with, we help them buy a tuk-tuk. So some of the ones that live in town don't have a way to earn money. So a tuk-tuk, driving that around something. And a lot of the others, particularly the porters, have gone back to their family farms so they can just grow what they need to survive. But definitely it's super hard. And even if you've gone back to the farm and you can survive, things like the money that you would normally have to pay off your house or to send your kids to school or these types of things are super hard. So they're doing it really tough in Tanzania at the moment. So definitely, definitely encourage you if you're thinking about doing Kilimanjaro, think about booking it in. Right now for Adventure Out Loud, we can guarantee you won't lose your deposit. So if you want to book in a trip, book it in with open-ended dates because we don't know when international borders will open. And at least give these guys some light at the end of the tunnel that they're going to get some work as soon as we can get over there. My best guess is Australia's probably not going to open this year. So I'm thinking 2021, hopeful for the start of the year, but probably realistically the middle of the year. And I think the main reason for that is even though we might all be vaccinated if we want to be by the end of the year, the risk of variants and the vaccine not working against those variants is probably still going to be pretty high. And as such, you know, you may still have the risk of having to quarantine for 2 weeks when you come back to Australia. So that's kind of why I'm thinking that time frame.
Yep. No, that's pretty much what I was thinking. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was expecting anyway, with just the way things are. I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? No one can do anything about it. So,
yeah. And at the end of the day, we're the fortunate ones to be in Australia, really. Like, life is pretty normal here. We can all carry on and continue our jobs for most of us. So not being able to travel sucks, and it's definitely frustrating me. But yeah, in the greater scheme, it's just one of those things we have to deal with for the next 6 months, a year or so.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
When do you reckon you might have the other info sessions with regards to gear, etc.? No.
Yeah, I'll let you know. So gear will likely be later in the year once we know roughly when you might be able to go. I don't want to run that too early because there's no use going and buying a whole heap of gear if you can't go for another year. So that'll probably be towards the end of the year. We do have a session every month though, Matt, generally the last Wednesday of every month. So next month is actually going to be on safari. So we're going to do a piece around safari and how you can go on safari, where the best places to go, all that kind of stuff. So that'll be on the 30th of June. I'm skipping May because in May I'm actually going to be out on the Larapinta Trail. So I'm doing the full 230k trek in 12 days. So it's going to be brutal, but should be lots of fun.
Nice. I think Maria, myself and brother still planning on doing Wilson's prom, probably August. So that'll be a good one, yeah.
Wonderful, yeah. Wilson's prom, I've never done it, but I've heard great things. So you'll have a great time.
Yeah.
Have you ever done the Kulula Great Walk? That's the one from Noosa to Rainbow.
I've heard of it, but I haven't done it. No.
I'm hoping to run a group through that later in the year as well, because Kim would like to do it, and I've got a number of other people that would like to do it. So we might organise. It's a 5-day trek, about 90 odd Ks. So we might organise a group for that, probably around September or October, and try and do that as well. So I'll keep you posted.
Nice. I was going today, driving from Dalby out to Childers. He was going behind the Banya Mountains, and there's meant to be some nice treks through there. It's always tempting when you drive past these places.
Absolutely. There's so many. That's one of the things I'm really enjoying about this shutdown is I've done more in Australia than I've ever done. I mean, I've travelled to 50 odd countries around the world, but I've not done that much in Australia. And it's given me a really good chance to explore my own backyard, which I'm really enjoying. So there's definitely some great things you can do here.
Yeah, hoping to get down to Tassie for a few days. Maria might be coming actually as well in end of July, so we'll see what happens there. Yeah. If we can do some walks or not.
The 3 Capes, that's an easier walk if you want something quite, I wouldn't say simple, but much easier. Otherwise, Laura and I did the South Coast Trail in December last year, and that was gnarly. It was very hard, but I don't know. It's definitely one of the best trips.
7 days, isn't it?
7 days.
It's about 7. Yeah.
7 days is what we did it in, but it's just really hard because you're carrying everything for the 7 days, so you've got quite a bit of weight on you. And one of the days, for example, you have to row across a river, which is about 150 meters wide, I think. So you jump in a boat, you row across, then you attach another boat, so there's always one on either side, and you row back, and then row back again. So you're rowing the thing 3 times normally, which the day I did it, there was huge wind coming down, so the wind drag against the boat was quite hard. And then there was quite a current taking us out as well. So I ended up, even though I was rowing as hard as I could, I'd kind of have to row as hard as I could when the wind was blowing to stay in the one spot. And then the wind would stop and I'd move 5 meters, and then I'd have to keep rowing as hard as I could to stay in the one spot. So it took a good hour and a half, 2 hours to do the 3 crossings. It was not an easy thing to do.
I've heard it's an epic hike. Yeah, that and the West Arthurs and that.
Yeah, absolutely. Western Arthurs would be great too. I highly recommend both of those, but you do have to make sure you're prepared for them because they're very remote and there's no reception, so you need to bring a PLB and that kind of thing. Yeah,
last year I got one a couple of months ago, and so that's probably a handy thing to constantly have in the pack. Even on day hikes, you just never really know, do you? So
absolutely, you hope you never need to use it, and it's a waste of money. But I mean, if you do, it might just save your life. Another scary thing here is in Australia with a snake bite,
Yeah, I even take it now when I'm doing remote road trips. Like last week was out Longreach and that, and driving between Emerald. And a lot of it, you got no reception. I think, well, if something happens, you can at least get a message out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very good, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my details for anyone that doesn't already have them. Feel free to reach out anytime. Happy to answer questions. There is a packing list on our YouTube already. As I said, I'll run a live session later in the year where I'll actually pull out all of my gear and I'll go, this is my jacket, this is my pants, here's my boots. And we'll run through so you can ask questions on each of those later in the year. Otherwise, keep exploring wherever you are in the world. Definitely don't lose faith in travel. I'm really enjoying these sessions because it's given me a chance to live vicariously through talking about traveling. Hopefully we could get back over to Kilimanjaro in Africa in 2022. I never, every time I do summit, I'm like, why the bloody hell am I doing this? Because it's so hard. But then when I reach the summit, I see the beautiful sunset. It's such a magical mountain, and I can't wait to get back and do it again in 2022. So looking forward to doing it with both of you, and talk to you both soon.
All right.